Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about some more short stories that I've been reading because I have definitely overindulged in the short story collections this January of 2026. I am reading with some delight The Best of C.L. Moore, which has been edited by Lester Del Rey here in this absolutely gorgeous little edition that I would never own if it was not thanks to Rob from Alspace. Thank you very much, Rob. So this cover is, I am 99% certain, by the brothers Hildebrandt, Greg and Tim Hildebrandt. It is wonderful and science fiction-y and evocative of the sort of stories which you're going to find within. C.L. Moore, Catherine, what was her middle name? Catherine Lucille Moore. Iconic, amazing, very, very difficult to find here at least. I've owned Gyrell of Jory by C.L. Moore twice in my lifetime. I'm very sorry I didn't keep the last one. I've been kicking myself, in fact, for years. So it was absolutely delightful to get this as a present. Now, the introduction is by Lester Del Rey. As it says, it's a very, very graceful introduction to charming writing, and it makes you very keen for the actual stories inside without really giving away too much of them or getting too hung up on his own writing, which I feel is something that some editors sometimes do. Anyhow, so within this one we have got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 if we include the foreword by Lester Del Rey and the afterword, which is a footnote to the first story by the author herself. I'm at the midway point, and I think this is probably a good time to stop, rest, review some of the ones that I've read already before starting on the next. Now, the ones that I have read take us up to Tryste in Time, which is from 1936, and the next one, Greater Than Gods, came in at 1939. So C.L. Moore notoriously is known for having married Henry Kuttner in 1940, and after that they wrote together. So I think that Tryste in Time may well be the intermediate point. All the stories before that were before she was writing with Kuttner. I feel that the ones after are probably ones that were very much part of her Kuttner era. Okay, the first one is called Shambleau. That is in French, which I don't speak. So hopefully I'm pronouncing it not too far off. This one was first copyright in 1933, and it was published in Weird Tales in November of 1933. Shambleau has one of the characters that is apparently iconic to C.L. Moore, and I'm not sure if I've encountered him before. He's called Northwest Smith, and he's this anti-hero. He's a bit of a smuggler, he's a bit of a space captain. He rollicks around the galaxy doing his thing, which is bad guy stuff. And in Shambleau, he is on Mars, where he's setting up things and stuff for his partner to bring in a spaceship. Obviously something a bit nefarious, a bit piratey, and it's nicely set up. It gives you the sense of Mars as a frontier town and what he's doing there. But in Shambleau, one of the first things that happens to him is that he is in, I think the town is called Lac de Rol. I'm not sure, I didn't write that down. But this beautiful girl is running from a mob, and the mob are in full cry, and they're after her, and obviously things are going to go very badly for her. And he, on a whim, he seems like a whimsical type of guy, calls the girl over, hides her behind him, and when the mob find her, he says, "She's with me." And their demeanour instantly changes. Now, us as modern readers, what we're going is, no, be careful, there's going to be something wrong. I don't think Northwest Smith would care what anyone thought, or indeed if there was something wrong. So he hides this girl, and he takes her back to his room, and he keeps getting on with his business, and he comes back. And she's described as very, almost like a plushie, very soft, very, not quite furry, but not quite human either. Very much, at first he thinks she's human, she very much isn't. She wears a reddish gown and a turban wrapped around her head, so he's never seen her hair. She refuses to tell him his language, but she makes coy remarks about how one day he might learn, she might let him hear her language, and there's other stuff. Then Northwest Smith starts to get nightmares, and then he finds out they're not actually nightmares, they're her. And I'm not really gonna give away the end of this story. It's hard to do with short stories, but the end is pure horror. So we've gone from science fiction to science fiction horror, with the horror being quite prominent. And it's a great ending. It's a slick, nasty, almost vampiric, sort of like spiritual vampire type horror. Great story, thoroughly loved it. The next one is The Black Thirst, and once again we've got Northwest Smith as our prime protagonist. This time he's on Venus, not Mars. This is very much the sort of solar system that Heinlein was talking about in The Green Hills of Earth and that era of his writing. Mars has got humans and it's got natives. Venus has got humans and it's got lush swamps and natives. It's a more entertaining, really, solar system in those science fiction stories than it ever is in real life, I'm afraid. Generally, I'm a science girl, but the science fiction did it better. Anyway, Venus. Slushy, swampy, Lovecraftian Venus. And once again, Northwest Smith is hanging around the docks being a lurker. And a girl comes by and then comes up to him and asks him for assistance. Now, this particular girl is woman. Sorry, not girl. I should stop doing that. Should not be wandering around the Edness waterfronts on her own at night. As soon as he gets a good look at her, he finds out she's one of the Minga maids. That's not a great word to be using in Australia, but I don't know that more knew that. The Minga maids are known to be these women that have been bred for beauty for untold generations. It reminded me a lot of the narrow women in a science fiction book that I wish I hadn't gotten rid of. But this idea that you can breed a woman so she's so unearthly beautiful that people will pay huge amounts of money for her to be in their court or house, even though they can never actually have an intimate relationship, and they're completely forbidden from breeding with the general population, which would dilute the genes. Anyway, this Minga maid, whose name he does eventually learn, tells him to come to the gate of the fortress that no man can penetrate without dire consequences of death. Say her name at the gate and he'll be brought in. And he is. A eunuch admits him, and he takes him along these dark corridors with gothic dark doors and slithering sounds in the deeps, and it's all very, very full of suspense. I felt suspense while reading it. It's like your breath sort of hitches what's coming down the next corridor. And when he came through the gate, the eunuch muffled him in a purple cloak, and at one point a girl comes out of a door, sees him, gasps in horror and falls to her feet, and he discovers that he's been disguised as the head of the fortress. Vordia is the name of the girl. I can't remember the name of the guy who's in charge of the fortress. Northwest Smith is proof against her blandishments. She wants to sort of coerce him with sexual allure into doing what she wants, but he wants to know what's actually happening. And then some weird stuff happens. She suddenly starts behaving like an automata, as though she's been taken over, and wandering down, down, down into the fortress until you're way below ground level, and it smells dank and earthy. And this is very Lovecraftian. And then our protagonist finds out more about the fortress, more than he ever wanted to know about the girls. And once again, we've got that psychic vampiric element that C.L. Moore gave us in the first story in Shambleau. So Black Thirst, if I was going to rate these stories, I can only really rate them against other C.L. Moore stories because they are so unique. But the first two were 5 out of 5s for me. I loved every part of them. The ending of the second story, Black Thirst, seemed longer, and it seemed perfect in every part. I really enjoyed it. Okay, next we had The Bright Illusion. Of the three, I didn't love this one as much as the previous ones. To me, it felt a little bit more fragmented. It started off really solid. You've got this guy wandering through a desert and he finds dead, desiccated bodies lying around this perfect golden sphere in the middle of the desert. And having struggled impotently with the three-body problem for so long, I was thinking this is the way you get a guy wandering through a desert finding desiccated bodies. I was really enjoying that. Then he gets sucked into the sphere, and the sphere is some kind of deity-ish thing that talks to him and tells him how there's this other world that it wants to conquer, but that other world is being protected by another deity that it can't access. But our main protagonist, whose name is not Northwest Smith, someone else, can possibly penetrate this other planet and by his sheer otherness break open the defenses of this other god and let the golden sphere in. It all seems very immoral is perhaps the wrong word, but often when you've got stories about deities or protagonists fighting against each other for ascendancy, there's often a moral element to it. In this story, quite nicely, there isn't any. There's no indication that the golden sphere thinks it's better than the other one. There's no indication that the other one is evil. This deity sphere just wants more power. It just wants to take over that other world. And the moral aspect of it is completely and utterly bypassed in the story, which I really respect. Anyhow, our protagonist, who I'm now starting to feel just a little bit curious what his name actually was. I don't know if he so much goes along with Dixon. I don't know that he so much goes along with it as accepts that this is what is going to happen to him. I think the sphere offers him the option of not complying, but that means being thrown back out of the sphere into the desert where he's going to die of thirst. So he goes along with it, and he gets a view of this other world, and the way C.L. Moore describes this other world is supreme. So nothing is the same as what mortal eyes can really describe. You've got individuals there, but you're talking about squiggling angles and movement and colours that can't actually be visualised in our eyes, and it's a good vision of it is enough to send Dixon insane until the sphere puts a glamour, if you will, over him, and when he looks upon these aliens, he sees humans. He knows they're not humans, but as he comes through into this world, he's greeted by one who is a priestess of this other god, and he falls deeply in love with her. It's not quite insta. He's insta-fascinated, but then he falls more and more in love with her, and even though he knows it's not a she, it's not a human, it's not anything he can relate to, they don't even have the two genders we do, he's still deeply involved in their existence. Finally, the black god becomes aware of them, and here, this one I am going to spoiler the end, so leap across until I take my hand down if you really don't want to know. So, the black god becomes aware when Dixon's presence lowers the protections and lets the golden sphere in to attack its foe. So you've got all this fighting between the gods, and during this, the images of around Dixon flicker in and out of his consciousness. And at the end, the golden sphere is defeated, the god who had that place remains in power, and it talks to Dixon and priestess of other god. And there's a lot of dialogue which is not really the kind of dialogue I would have imagined through deification, but it ends up offering them the option of staying together because she is now deeply in love with him as well. They don't want to be parted. And there's this theological question of, if he dies there, he's not going to end up in her afterlife. But if she can't come to his world, and if she died there, would they end up in the same afterlife? It's all an afterlife question. And eventually, the dark god just kind of gives them what they want and kills them both. And that's it. Done. It's the actual writing process of this story that you really like. I found it a bit patchier, a bit wordier, and maybe a bit more theological than I was really in the mood for. But that 3 stars for that I gave this story would probably still be a 10 out of 10 anywhere else. I'm only comparing these stories against each other. Okay, our next story is The Black God's Kiss, which is the first in the Jirel of Jory sequence. And it reminded me just how much, how strongly, and how completely I bonded to Jirel when I first read that book as a teenager. This is swords and sorcery at its best. This is a flawless story. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's got this looming terror and dread throughout. You've got this quest that is like pushing through dough and terror. And the aim of the goal is to defeat the person who has taken her city. I love Jirel. I think she's a marvelous protagonist. The fact that she was out there on the battlefield in full armor protecting her city from the invaders. Yep. She's the girl. Woman. She's the hero. Love it. And the fact that she's, in the beginning of the story, she's dragged, kicking and fighting into the presence of Gilayum, who's defeated her city. And not until she's unmasked does he realize he's been fighting so hard against a woman, and she did so well. But he won, and she's furious, and he's contemptuous, and he laughs down at her, he forces a kiss on her, and she's determined for revenge. This is the supreme revenge story, and I love it every bit as much as I've loved it every other time I've read it. There is nothing, even if you know every word that's coming, it's still fantastic. Black God's Kiss, I heart you, marvelous. And the next story that I read, Tryste in Time, which was first published in 1936 in Astounding. It's a good story. I think the main problem with it for me was that it wasn't Jirel of Jory, which was all I really wanted to read at that point. I gave it a good day or two in between reading the two, but still Tryste in Time was not really for me. Once again, we've got one of those supreme hero protagonists. Eric is described kind of like a Viking, a modern Viking hero adventurer type. He's been all over the world. By the time he's 30, he's been to every continent. He's fought in every battle. He's vanquished every mountain, been through every forest. He's got scars. He's ridden with steep warriors on the steeps. He's conquered whatever. You get the picture. All of that he's done. And now he's 30 and he's bored as hell because there's nothing left to conquer. Then one day he falls into this discussion with someone called Dr. Walter Dow, who insists that all the stuff that he's been doing doesn't really rate. What's really exciting is science and where science can take you. Eric, of course, is not the cerebral type, and he isn't particularly interested until he finds out that Dow has created a manner of time machine that will allow him to go elsewhere. Now, Dow knows that it works in that the subjects that he's tested it on vanish, but he doesn't know where they go, and they've never come back. Eric doesn't care though, and he straps on this tank, which I imagine kind of like a scuba tank, on his back, makes sure he knows where the levers are in his pouch, and off he goes to explore the multiverse. And he comes across a couple of random things. He's not ever sure if he's going forward in time or backward in time. He's not really sure where he is or what he's seeing. He does, though he's got a fascinating capacity for languages, he doesn't usually recognize the languages. Once he encounters two people and he thinks it's some early variant of French. Occasionally he thinks he's gone so far in the future that he's reached a sort of dystopian level. A couple of times he goes so far back into the past that he thinks he's seeing proto-humans that aren't quite fully human. They're a bit more Neanderthal-like, I guess. That's my word, not C.L. Moore's. And then there's this other race that he thinks might have come from the stars. So there's a lot of little vignettes, and they're all good. There's an element of linkage through them when he starts realizing that he keeps seeing the same girl with the smoky blue eyes. Smoky blue-grey eyes. And he feels this insane attraction to her. And he feels that she's a big part of his ongoing narrative, and he thinks that she's the theme in where he's traveling. He starts looking out for her. And he also sees that as he progresses through each jump, she recognizes him more and more easily each time. So yes, you've got this romance subtext. It's a romance with a difference, though. I did enjoy that story very much. It was good. The time machine was kind of really just a MacGuffin. It didn't even feature as strongly as the time machine in H.G. Wells. It was just a way to progress the story. That's fine. That's what the story is. I enjoyed it. Again, I think I'm giving this 3 out of 5 stars, and only because I just read The Black God's Kiss and I loved it so much and I wanted more. Okay, now my next story in this lot will be Greater Than Gods, and that will take me through, like I said, to 39, when just before C.L. Moore married Henry Kuttner. I might give it a bit of a break, and when it will reappear with a review with a different cover. That's how I foresee myself telling them apart. A word on C.L. Moore's writing. Catherine had the goods. It's delicate, it's spot on, it feels as if not perfect, it feels so smooth and well done. And despite that very deft, delicate writing, you get stories with a lot of punch. There's the horror, there's the adventure, there's a gut punch to nearly every story, and the underlying themes are all very strong. So, thank you for watching. That is the first few stories out of the best of C.L. Moore. And read good books. Bye.